Okay, I found the particle editor. It was in my computer. I know it wasn't worth checking it in the fridge, but anyway, here we go. I think we are live. I think all should be good. And you all in the chat, let me know if all is good, if you can see me fine, if you can hear me fine, and you can see my screen fine as well. If you can see nice, pretty GameMaker over here. Just write yes in the chat if all is good for you. Just so I know, so we can begin with the topic of this stream. I don't see any yeses yet, so I can't assume all is good. Okay, all is good, Ross tells me. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing good. And today we are gathered to talk about the particle editor. So this is new. This is at the moment in the GameMaker beta, so anyone can go in, they can download, they can play with it, and it is part of the February release. So you're gonna see this go into the normal GameMaker version at the end of the February, at the end of the month. So for now, if you want to play with it, you have to go with the beta, and that's what I'm using here as well. Let me take a look at the chat, see what you're all saying. Yeah, GameMaker is in the chat, yeah. The audio is mono single left. Oh, right. Because I didn't check the it on the headphones. So let me see if they have an option for that. Just a minute. Yeah, it would be the right ear, would be sad, yeah. It is the Mac version, yeah. Just a minute, let me see. Yeah, GameMaker did make time for that. Hello, Andres. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. Hello, Mr. Ma. Hello, Evan. The infamous guy who made the thumbnail is here. Yeah. Yeah, so it is from the left at the moment. Let me just stop real quick, but if I stop. So I should be back now, and let me know how the audio is now. I hope it's not just in the left ear anymore, but it is weird. I selected mono audio, and for some reason it changed it to 5.1, which is anyone even watching on 5.1 now? But how is the audio? Audio is the same. Okay, we're gonna have to go with this, sadly, um, because if I keep looking at this, we're not gonna be able to start looking at the particle editor. So yeah, maybe try speakers, but sadly, that's how it's gonna be for this one. Okay, so this stream, yeah, this is about the particle editor, and we are going to look at what the new editor is like, what options it has. I'm gonna first take you through all the options that it has, and we're then gonna make some new particles of our own on the stream. I know I'm gonna make a fire effect and an explosion effect, and yeah, you're gonna have to set it to mono. Sorry about that. The particle editor works on the left ear only. Yeah, even though it's not something that's audible, it works on the left ear only. Um, yeah, and the particles that I am gonna create in this stream, I'm gonna make them just with the default built-in particle sprites, even though you can use your own sprites, but we're gonna work with what GameMaker has given us. So if you're seeing GameMaker here right now, there's a new folder for particle systems. I hope this is big enough for you all to see. I did increase the DPI, and so it should be good for you all to read here. And so there's the new particle systems asset. So it is an asset. You create an asset, And when you make the asset, it opens up its new editor. That's how it works in GameMaker. You make an asset and then you go through its editor to modify it. Yeah, at last, particles are here. And if you want to play around with it after the stream, you can go to the beta. It's linked in the description. You can download it and anyone can access it. You don't need a subscription for it. So you can just start with the beta and it should be in the normal GameMaker version by the end of this month. So that's the particle system that you see, the new asset that I made just here. And this is the new editor. This is what's brand new. The new editor is here in the middle, and on the left is the good old inspector, which is also a new thing. It was added a few versions ago, but it works with the inspector, and so you need the inspector open there. It should be open by default for most of you. And this is the canvas of the particle editor. And so whatever you make in the particle system, you can change a lot. I'm going to show you what you can change. Whatever you make in the particle system, you're going to be seeing it here in the canvas. And this is what they've given us by default in the particle system. And whatever you make in the particle system will be here. This is where the magic happens. Whatever you see in game, you're going to be previewing that over here. A quick thing, you do have the canvas frame here, so you might be able to see on the stream. Can I put a particle system inside the particle system? I knew that question was going to come and it came too early. No, you can't. It's not like a sequence. There will be a time for questions in the stream, so we can get to all of them. So for now, I'm going to focus on what I'm showing you guys here. So you see the canvas frame. It's like a sequence, because if you create a sequence, you have a frame there as well, but this frame doesn't do anything, so you can disable it from here. This is just for reference, like if you know you're working within a 128 by 128 confine for a particle, you can enable this, but I'm just going to disable it because it does nothing. And the way a particle system works is you have a particle system asset that you create, and then within that system asset, you can make as many emitters as you want. And one emitter can only emit or release one type of particle. So it can do that every frame, or you can do it just once, depending on your settings. But that's what a particle system is. It's a collection of emitters that just release the particles that you've assigned to them. So in this particle system, what you're seeing is the default emitter that they've given us here. Whenever you make a new system asset, that's what you're going to see. Just to show you how this is supposed to work, if I just open this one here that I already have, this is a pretty nice fire effect. And what you're seeing here is 4 different emitters. If you see this list, this is the emitters list, and I can make them invisible, and I can just look at one emitter at a time. I can look at them all at once if I just change their position so I can see them separately. And so this shows you how a particle system is supposed to work. It's basically a collection of different emitters, and you have these 4 emitters in this one system. Someone's saying I need to increase audio volume, so let me know if I do, if it is too low. I know it is on the left only. That is a problem that's going to be in the stream. But if you're on headphones, if you try using speakers instead, then your right ear won't be sad anymore. But I think the audio should be good enough. More left ear. No, that would be torture then. Okay, so this is a particle system. That's basically what it is. It's just a collection of emitters. One emitter only emits one type of particle. So this is emitting like a fire, like a flame, and this is also doing a flame, but it's not moving as much. It's more in the center. This is the smoke, and these are the embers. We are going to make something similar on the stream. So that's what a particle system basically is. You have the emitters here, so you can hit the plus button. That makes another emitter. You don't see any change right now because it just made it in the same position as the previous one. But if I just move it to the right, you can see we have two emitters now in this system. And the particle system also has an origin. You can see it over here, the origin value. You can also move the origin marker around wherever you want. So this is similar to how a sprite works. Um, so if you put the particle system in a room or in a sequence and you try to move it, you try to rotate it, it's gonna happen around the origin. So it works in a similar manner to how it works in a sequence or in a sprite. So I'm gonna put it back to 0 by 0. And so we have two emitters now. Let me quickly take you through what the options are for an emitter just after I take a look at the chat again. So a system is like a group of them. Yeah, it is like a group of emitters. I bet it doesn't work with delta time. Not at the moment. That's not something I checked either, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't. It just follows the game's frames. Can we add water effects? Something like that is more suited for the filter feature in the room, but if you want, you can make water particles. What controls the ticks for when the particles show up? I'm pretty sure that's just the game's regular ticks at the moment. It's not using like time sources and stuff. Flip me headphone around, left ear sad gang. That's good, we need some diversity over here. Only right ear can't be sad anymore. So I'm gonna select emitter 1, the left one. I'm gonna show you the options that we have. There are actually two kinds of options. So you can have the options for the emitter, and that controls what the emitter does, how it works, um, how many particles it releases, what shape does it release them over, what region does it release them in. So there are options for the emitters that you can change. And then there are options you can change for the particle type itself, like what that particle looks like, what is its color, what is its speed and size, and all that. And so these are the two things we're gonna look at, and that is all you can change about an emitter anyway. Can you adjust resolution to match pixel art? I mean, in the end, a particle system is going to be drawn in your room anyway, so it seems kind of irrelevant whether you want it to whether you have a game that has pixel art or it has high quality art, because it is really going to work with everything. In the end, everything is rendered to your application surface anyway. So if your application surface has a lower resolution, it's in the end gonna look low resolution. Um, this particle system, if you've used GameMaker before, if you know about the particle system that we've always had, the one where you had to write functions in code, you had to write part system create, and then you had to create the particle types yourself. This is that same system, and it's still at runtime, it's still using that same system. Yeah, it's still using that same system. It just now has a visual editor for you to modify a particle settings in the editor and preview it. But on the runtime side, it's the same system as before. So if you are familiar with that, then it is good for you to know that it hasn't changed. The runtime side of it, like how particles work, how they behave, that hasn't changed much. Mostly what this is giving you a visual editor side to it. I'm glad you're transitioning finally from 1.4 to 2. Yeah, even though there is no 2 anymore, so I like that you put it in quotes. But yeah, I'm glad you're doing that. That'll be a nice change. Are the emitters gonna draw over a special surface layer? So you can put a particle system into a room. into a layer, so then it's gonna draw to that layer. But you can, as always, you can just take the particle system's ID and you can disable automatic drawing and you can draw it yourself. So yeah, you can do whatever you want to do. You can put it in a layer. You can draw it yourself wherever you want. So yeah, emitter settings. I'm gonna edit emitter 1. The first option, let me know if these options are good enough for you to read. Um, so just write yes if this is good for you. The first option is enabled. If you just untick that, it just goes away. And what this does is it doesn't make it invisible. It's not like it makes it invisible and it keeps going in the background, but it just pauses it. So the moment you re-enable it, it's going to continue from the frame that it's left on. And okay, so yeah, there's the GameMaker download link if you want to try the beta. Yeah, that is a technical issue with the stream. So there is audio. There is only going to be audio on the left ear, but that is how we have to go with it. Otherwise, we won't be able to do the stream itself. So sorry about that. The second option is the preview. And so if you look here, this is the box of the emitter, and this is the region inside which particles are created. So you can actually go and make it bigger. And so the particles are created inside that bigger region now. So if you disable preview, that basically goes away, as in you can't see it anymore. And so you can only see the particles, and this is good for when you just want to see the particles and you don't want to see the emitter itself. And there's the preview color. So you can just change the color of the emitters region. And so if you have multiple emitters, you want to easily differentiate them, you can do that here. I'm going to set this to a bit of blue. What's happening in the chat? Yeah, we did have to sacrifice the right here. The next option is the mode, and this is quite important. By default, this is set to stream for this emitter, and what this means is that it's gonna make particles every step. It's gonna make them every frame, and that's what you see. If you select burst instead, it means that it's only going to create them once. That's what burst means. So it's, if you want an explosion, you make the particle system, it only happens once, you're going to use burst. Now in the editor, what you do see is that the particle is being created repeatedly, but that's just sort of a test to let you see what the particle is going to look like. So the moment the particle dies, it is replayed. But in the game, if you place this particle system in the game and it has a burst mode, it's only going to be created once and you're not going to see it again. So you're going to have to make it again. So this is like for explosions and stuff. I'm glad you're liking it, man. So yeah, stream is every frame, like a fire or something that you just want it to happen continuously. Then there's the particle count. So right now it's set to 1. It means it's gonna make 1 particle every frame. And so by default there are 60 frames. It means you are going to get 60 particles in a second. If I increase that, we have 2 particles per frame, and you can just keep increasing that to get more particles. And so that's the positive side of it. You can also use negative numbers. Obviously, if you go 0, you get no particles. If you go -1, that is the same as 1. I'll tell you why. And if you keep reducing the number, you see that the particles keep going down. So if you have a negative number, hi Rodrigo, how's it going? If you have a negative number, it means, so I have -10 here, right? So this means that every frame it's gonna roll a dice basically. If so there's a 1 in 10 chance now that a particle will be created in any frame, and so that's why you see fewer particles. it's not waiting, but it's every frame it's rolling a dice, and the dice has as many sides as the negative number you've written here, and if it rolls on one, you get a particle. And so if I just change this to -100, now you're going to see much fewer particles because now the chance has changed to 1 out of 100. Yeah, that is a feature of this stream. You only get audio on your left ear. Um, okay, so that's the particle count. You can do positive and you can do negative for random particles. No, it's not every 10 frames. It's the same as you just using the part emitter stream function. And if you look at this documentation, that's what it does as well. But no, it's not once every 10 frames. Um, in burst as well, the particle count does the same thing. If you have 100, every time the system is created, it's gonna make 100 particles and then it's gonna not do anything. If you have -100, it is again going to run. It's going to run a condition. It's going to roll a dice. But let's now go back to 1 and let's go back to stream because that is my favorite mode. Can you use floats? I mean, how do you create 1.5 particles? No, no, you can't. It doesn't even allow you to enter a dot. Is it possible to import the particle effect as a sprite animation? No, because it is a particle and the way particles work at runtime in GameMaker is different. It's just for like visual effects and the sprite is different, so they're not the same thing. Yeah, Mesh Arcade, I have no problems with that conclusion. And I like the fact that the devil isn't saying anything. Okay, so there's distribution. If it's linear, you're gonna see particles throughout the whole region. Uh, it's not gonna be weighted towards any particular sides. If you go to Gaussian, you're going to see more particles in the center. So this is useful for like fire effects, where you have a circular region, but you want more particles in the center. Yeah, that is nice. Inverse Gaussian is the inverse of that, so you get less particles in the center and you get more particles near the edges, basically. I'm gonna go back to linear now, and there's this shape that you have. So you can set this to ellipse, and so you get an elliptical region. You can make it a circle. So this is useful for fire and explosions and stuff. And there's diamond, and there's line. This is a very interesting one. I don't know what I'm gonna be using the line shape, but it's good to have. So that's the emitter properties. I mean, there's the XY position and width and height here as well if you just want to enter any hard numbers here, but we know that we can change that even in the canvas. So that is the emitter properties. That is all you can change about an emitter and how it emits particles. Yeah, this is a star-studded stream, isn't it? We've got some very important people here. Okay, so that's the emitter properties. Before we jump onto the particle type properties, what you're going to see here is a library, and this basically has presets for emitters. At the moment, if I open it, it's empty, and I can make my own presets, but a GameMaker in future versions is going to come with built-in particle presets that you can use. So that's going to be nice to have. For now, what you can do is you can save an emitter by clicking on the save button. You can enter a name, and so then it's going to become a saved preset, and all of these settings below are going to get linked to it, and so you can reuse this preset in any other particle system if you want to use the same particle in various systems. And I'm going to show you more of that later during the stream. Is this better than the Unity particle system? I mean, I don't know. I'm not the correct person to ask that. and I hope we don't start a fight. You can click on this button to unlink it. So now the preset is there, you can use it, but now it's not linked to this emitter, so I can go and make my own changes without changing the preset. So I'll just go and delete the preset for now. And let's look at the particle type properties. So this is what the particle looks like. So the first one you have is a texture. So you have many built-in ones that you can choose from, like pixel, disk, square, line, and star. So there are many good ones. And throughout the stream, the particles that I'm gonna make using these. But you can also select a sprite from your projects here. You can just click on this button to make a new sprite if you want to. And so if you just write anything here, there it is in the particle system. So if you actually reduce the number of particles, you can actually read that. But that is useful that you can use your own sprites. And if you have a sprite that has multiple frames, you can change the frame number to use. If I select any other than 0, you can see it just disappears because it only has one frame. But if you have a sprite that has multiple frames, you can change that here. So let's change it back to sphere for now. Then there's color, and you're gonna see that there's 3 color swatches, and this is for the this is throughout the life of the particle, right? So this is the first color that it gets in the beginning, and this is in the middle of its life and it's having its midlife crisis, and then this is right at the end. So if I just change the middle one to say blue, you're gonna see here that the particles that are in the middle are blue, and if I change the end one to say green, that's what you're going to see. The particles at the end are green. Will the sprite play the animation if it has multiple frames? I doubt that because there's this explicit property here for the frame, but let's try it out. Let me just add a new frame here. Let's select this sprite, and it is not playing the animation because that's what I expected. It has this explicit frame field, so it's just going to use that frame. So yeah, there's your question answered. Let's go back to sphere. And so yeah, I showed you the colors just now. Let me go with yellow for the middle and a dark red for the end. And this next option that I'm going to show you is my favorite option. So if I just hit this additive button, you can see what happens to the particles. It just looks better now. It just looks like an actual flame. It looks bright. If I just turn that off, you see more of the actual colors, and with this it's like you see more of the lights of the color. So the way it works basically is that instead of replacing the value on the screen, it's adding it. So if you have like black, here you can actually see the black without additive, but you can enable additive and now you don't see the black ones. That's because the value of a black color is 0, and in normal mode it's just replacing with that color on the screen, so you see 0. But in additive mode it's adding that color to the screen. That's why it's called additive. And in case of black, it does +0, and so you're not going to see anything. That's why black disappears, and the brighter colors, they sort of mix and match together because there's no replacing happening anymore. It's all adding up, and so the more it adds up, the brighter it becomes, and that's why it's also looking really bright. So this is really useful for fire effects, but I'm going to disable it for now because we need to look at some other options. This is the life of each individual particle. So it can be a random value between the minimum and the maximum. So at the moment it's 80 frames, and it's a fixed value because we've set the minimum and the maximum to both to that. But if I just set, say, the maximum to 200 and the minimum to 50, you're going to see generally the particles last longer, and so they go further away. If I set the minimum to 200 as well, we see more particles now going all the way through the end, because they are all lasting for 200 frames. They don't have that 50 to 200 range anymore. You can still use functions to modify these through code, right? Not at the moment. So at the moment, if you just create a particle system, you just see that in the game you can move the particle system, change its position, but you can't take the emitter and move the emitter or change the particle type. But functions for playing around with particle system at runtime might come in the future. But for now, if something you create is you create something here, that's you're mostly what you're going to be seeing in the game as well. So yeah, that's the life there. I'm gonna set that back to 80 and 80. Is the additive more applied per particle or to the whole system? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's per particle, because if it was per the whole system, you wouldn't be seeing the effect that you're seeing right now. There's a scale, and the scale is just a static value for all the particles. So if I just set it to 2 and 2, you can see they are much bigger now. If I set the y scale to 0.5, they're gonna be really squished, because the y scale becomes really small, the x scale becomes large. But that's all this is. This is a static value, so I'm gonna set that back to 1. Then there's the size. So this can be confusing. There's a separate scale property and a size property, but the difference is that scale is static and the size actually allows you to have randomness and to animate uh, the size of a particle. And the values for the size, um, they aren't separated by x and y. They are just the size values that apply to both the x scale and the y scale. Yeah, the audio is on the left side. That is a problem with the stream. But as we say, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Um, so the size also has a minimum and a maximum, like the life. So if I set this to 0.5, the minimum to 0.5 and the maximum to 1.5, the particles now have varied sizes. Some are small, some are bigger, and that's the usefulness of randomness here. If I set them back to 1 for now, there's the increment value which is added to the size every frame. So if I set this to 0.1, you can see they keep becoming bigger. If I set this to minus 0.1, they keep becoming smaller every frame. Obviously that's a very large value because it has a noticeable effect very quickly. But if I set it to like 0.01, negative 0.01, the effect is much better now. It is mostly going to the end of the particle's life. When is the particle system going to be available? It is available in the beta right now, and in the normal GameMaker release, it's going to be available by the end of the month. So that's going to be the 2023.2 update. But yeah, you can go and play around with it in the beta. There's a link in the description. So that's the size. There's a wiggle argument as well, and if you write a number here, it will be randomly added to the size of the particle every frame. The number itself won't be added. It'll be the number that will be added every frame will be between 0 and the number that you entered, so it will be random in that range. But if I just enter 0.5, where to get this version from? Yeah, it's in the description, so you can just get it. Imagine linking these values to an animation curve. Yeah, that would be nice. Now go and request that. Okay, so if I set the wiggle to 0.5, you're going to see it's fluctuating. um, the value a value up to 0.5 is being added or subtracted from every particle every frame, and this is good to add some uh, extra randomness in the movement of a particle. If you set to something low like 0.2, let's say, the effect is much more subtle and it looks like bubbles now. It would just be cool, but it's good to have cool things. Okay, so I'm gonna set the increment back to 0 and the wiggle as well, so we can look at the speed. So this is where we already have default values. The speeds are set to 5, and that's why these particles are moving. If I set them to 0, you see they don't move at all. They just pop up and they change their color because that's what we set, and then they just die. So the speeds can also have a random range. So if I set the minimum to 2 and the maximum to 5, you can see their speeds are now varied. If I just increase the range a bit more, you can see it's clearer. Now I'll set the speeds to 4, so that's the constant value that we get. And this also has an increment, so if I set the increment to 0.1, you'll see they get faster gradually because their speed is increasing by 0.1 every frame. So if you make this negative, the speed will instead go down. So say I say minus 0.02, you can see the particles start out at the speed of 4 as I've written here, but they eventually come to a stop. So let me set the increment back to 0 and show you the wiggle then, which is the same as the wiggle we had in size, which means it's going to add some randomness to the speed. So if I set the wiggle to say 2, let me set it to 4 actually, and you can see it's kind of going like this. Because the speed keeps increasing and decreasing, there's so much fluctuation in it. It kind of looks like I'm doing some cool science experiments here, but I don't know anything about science. Then there's gravity. If I set the gravity to 0.5, you'll see they start falling down. This is cool. It's like, I guess, popcorn's coming out of a machine. Set to 0.1 and the effect is much lower now. I mean, we should be able to link animation curves to literally everything. Like, imagine linking animation curves to debug messages. Now, wouldn't that be cool? You can also control the direction of the gravity. By default, it's down. If I set it to right, you can see the particles start going in that direction. I like how there's an angle indicator. Yeah, that is nice to have, just to play around with it. That looks more like a wind effect, and so when I want to give the idea of a particle blowing in the wind, I like to use the gravity modifier because this gives a pretty believable effect in that regard. Bruh, this is so nice. Yeah, it is. I'm gonna get some water now. Make it red and it's blood splatter. This is a family friendly stream, so no blood please. Okay, so I'm gonna disable gravity now. Then there's the direction. This is where we also have a default value given to us by GameMaker, which is the minimum value is 80, the maximum value is 100. So it's generally going in the direction of up, because if you want to go up, you use an angle of 90. So that's what you get here. If I just set both of these to 90, the particles are just going in that same direction. So to add some variation, you're going to want to use a range there. If you just say 0 to 360, you just get particles going all over, and so this can be useful for like explosions and stuff, or effects that you want to create from a top-down perspective. Let me set it back to 80 and 100. This also has an increment value. Please say no to unity. We're not here to spread hatred. We accept everyone. So increment increases the direction in case of the direction. So if I just enter 1, you can see it starts to rotate. It's not actually rotating each particle, that's gonna come soon. It's the option below it, but it's rotating the angle of its movement. So if I do like 2 or 3, it just keeps rotating. So that is a cool effect. I think I could use this for like a magic attack or something, like particles in someone's hands and the particles coming out that just keep rotating there. You can do something like that. And if I do this and I apply a wiggle to it, let me apply something larger. Okay, so something like 20, no, 50. And now you can see that the wiggle in the direction, how the direction also keeps changing, it's fluctuating, it's adding random values to it every frame. Where are the alpha settings? Right, that's something I looked over because that's in the color. So if you want to change the alpha, like I want to change the alpha in the middle, I can select the middle color and I can lower the alpha here, and that lowers the alpha. So there's the answer to that. So let me reset the wiggle for this and the increment, and now let me show you the orientation. And for this I need a sprite, because the orientation is a rotation of the sprite that's displayed for each particle. So let me select a sprite from here. Let me move it a bit here. I'm gonna lower the number of particles so you can see each individual particle more easily. And for this I'm gonna also, first of all, before setting the direction, I'm gonna show you the orientation. So the orientation you have here below the direction, it also has minimum and maximum values, and this is the angle of the sprite of each particle. So if I just set this range to 0 to 360, the sprites are gonna be rotated randomly. But let me show you what I love about this feature is that if I have a direction, if I have it say rotating like this, let me actually increase the life for that a bit so it lasts longer. So you have them moving in a particular direction. If you just hit the relative button in orientation, the direction is the orientation, the angle of the sprite is going to change to follow the direction basically. So it's going to become relative to that. But even on top of that, you can add to it to change the orientation. So if I do 90 and 90 here, then it rotates by 90 degrees, but it's still following the direction of movement there. Do I still have YYC on Mac? Yeah, I do, but I haven't used it here. I just use this Mac for streaming and video stuff, so that's why I'm doing it on Mac. But I'm a Windows user. So that's a relative option. You also have increment for this so that the orientation keeps changing every frame, and you also have wiggle so that there is some randomness to its orientation. So I'm gonna now disable all that because I've shown you what it is, and let me just set this to back to 0. And the final options that we have now are the subparticles. So you can tell a particle to create a particle. I mean, normally you know that an emitter creates particles, but you can also. I had no idea the particle system was so capable before. Yeah, it was. It had all these options, but you had to code them, so they were only on the runtime side. So this is just showing that, but yeah, it is quite capable. Um, you can ask a particle to create a particle. It can create a particle when the particle itself dies. So, for example, if you have a raindrop, and when the raindrop dies, it should create a ripple. So, you can do that. Or you can also ask a particle to create another particle every frame. So, if you want like a flame to burst smoke every frame, you can do that. Um, so, for example, here in the editor, you do need to have presets created to use these. So, I'm pretty quickly going to make another particle system. I'm going to make this burst, say 20 particles. It shouldn't move as much, so maybe just a speed of 1, and it ends with a color that has no alpha, so it fades away. Now this I can save as a preset. Let's say dust end, because I'm not very good at coming up with names. And going back into my original particle system, now when you are going between particle systems, just make sure that you are aware of what you have selected for the inspector, because it can be quite confusing. Like I come back from a particle system into another one, and I try to change its properties, but I don't realize that the emitter from the old particle system is still selected. So when you come into a particle system, just make sure you select its emitter that you want to edit. So I can go into the subparticles. Do particles have collisions? They don't, because they are only visual. So yeah, on death, I can say create the dust end particle. And so when the particle here dies, let me disable that other one. So when a particle here dies, it creates that particle system that I asked it here. You can also change how much it creates. So it can make like 6, as I said here. And that's what the on death subparticle is. It's when the particle ends. So as I said, if there's a raindrop and when it dies you want to make a ripple, this is what you use. And then there's the on update one. So if I open the on update one and I select this, those particles are just making that other particle type every frame. And so this is quite a lot, but if I lower the value, okay, it just started, the GameMaker just went to like 2 FPS there. So I don't know what happened there, but yeah. So that's the on update. So now you know that a particle can also create other particles. So what it's doing here, it's not creating another system. It's not taking the reference of another particle system that you have and creating that. It's just taking the particle type from your presets, and then it's just emitting that type based on the particle count that you have here. So that is all the options you have for an emitter, and we are going to look more at presets, and we're also going to make a quick particle effect. But before I jump onto that, let me show you where you can actually use a particle system. So if I move it to the center here, I can open a room and I can make an asset layer, and I can drop the particle system here. You will see this in game, or you can also preview it here if you just hit play. there it is in the room. If you also run the game, you should see it. And there it is in the game. Although I am seeing both the emitters that I had in the system. So the visible checkbox here, it seems it's only for the editor. And so if you don't want to see it in the game, just gotta delete it. You have many options here, by the way. If you right click on an emitter, you can delete, you can cut, copy, you can even duplicate. So the duplicate option is quite nice to have. But yeah, that's it. You can put in the room, you can put it in a sequence. So if I just make a sequence real quick, run game, I want to see it live in game. Yeah, I already did that. Yeah, I can drop it here, and if I play the sequence, there are my particles. And because this is a sequence, you can animate it, you can add tracks for position, rotation, color multiply, origin, and scale. So you can do a lot with particle systems here. At the moment, you can only move around whole systems. You can't move individual emitters, but I don't know if that is going to come in the future. But this is something for you to know for now. So that's for a sequence, and if you want to make it at runtime, there are functions for that. If you've already worked with particles, you might know about the function part system create or part system create layer, which lets you create a new empty particle system at runtime. And that function now takes an optional argument, which is the asset, which is a particle system asset from here. And so if you just type part system create and pass in the particle system, it's going to make that. And I will show you that later in the stream. And that is the basic of the particle system. I'm not ending the stream right now, but I'm taking a break from this to look at the chat. And if you guys have any questions, let me see and go through them right now. I can't promise I'll be able to go through everything because chat sometimes moves a bit too fast. But if you have a question, write it right now because I am looking at the chat. So let me look at it at a minute, uh, for a minute, and I don't see any questions immediately. So it seems that either the questions are too long or there are no concerns, no questions. How do you implement this into a game? Like if you press a button. Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain right now, but it would be good for me to show you. Um, if I just make an object, add an event, say the mouse global left pressed event. So uh, this event will run whenever the left mouse button is pressed. Let me select GML code. You can say part system create, enter the name of your particle system, like particle system 10 I have over here, and it'll be created. You can get its ID and you can do a lot with it. To begin with, you can change its position to, for example, created at the mouse. So let's see if that works. Let me put the object here, and hit play. So yeah, when I hit the left mouse button, the particle system is created. Now it does continue to exist because I'm using the stream mode, but if you use burst mode, you'll only see it once. And there is a similar function in GML Visual as well. If you're using that, it's called create particle system, and that should also have an argument for that. Plans for creating particles along a ring structure. Well, I don't know about that at the moment. I do know that the emitter shapes that have been added are the ones that were already there in the particle system. So doubt a new one will be added this month, but if you want, you can go and suggest that, and the correct team will look at that. They're planning on adding path type sprite features for animated particles. Again, I don't know much about the plans, but you are free to go and make feature suggestions for all this. If you think there is something that isn't in the system that should be added. Particles showing random images in a selected sprite would be cool. Yeah. So it seems most of what I'm getting here is not questions, but feature suggestions. That's quite a good sign because it seems you all are excited for the particle editor. You understand it and you want more from it. So that's always nice. But yeah, uh, some of these features that you're talking about, I might keep them in my mind and talk about them later. So it's good that you're talking about them. Will 3D ever come to GameMaker? There are people doing 3D right now. If you want, you can do it. Okay, so let's go and make. Wait, there's one more question. Can we add animations to the speed of the particle, like with an animation curve? No, at the moment, all you have there is just the increment and the wiggle, and you can't do any more than that right now. But yeah, you can file a feature session. It seems like there were quite a couple of people excited to use animation curves with particles. Will 5G ever come to GameMaker? Yeah, it's already in it. Like, you just have to type the function make 5G game, and it'll come out of your computer, and you will be in the fifth dimension. That's all you have to do. Can particle emitters be shared between different systems? Yeah, they can be. That's the use of presets. I'm going to show you very soon. Let me make a fire effect. So let's see. Let's make a new particle system. I'll call it PT Fire. I should actually say PS because it's a particle system. And let's see. Let me disable the canvas frame. And for the fire, I'm actually going to make a fire for that dot sprite that I have. So let me see what is the area that I need to fill. So in the image editor, if I just select the marquee tool, I should be able to select the area and see the size. So it's around 44. It's around 57 by 1. Oh wait, that's the okay. That's the size of the sprite. Selection area is around 30 by 30. Okay, let's go with that then. So for this emitter, I'm gonna set the width and height to 30 and 30. Yeah, a lot of feature requests. Yeah, just go through the chats and note them all down. So yeah, 30 by 30 area for the fire. Can you adjust particle types defined with this at runtime? No, you can't at the moment. But even if you do get a function for, say, retrieving the particle types made in a system, um, we can modify particle types at runtime that are created at runtime, but yeah, not the ones that are created in the system. And about whether it's coming or not, Graf Patrick will know more about that. Okay, so yeah, fire. I should use the ellipse shape for this and the Gaussian distribution. And first of all, I think this is too it lasts too long, so let's set the life to 50 and 50. Let's set the minimum to 30 so we don't have all the particles going all the way to the end. And when the particle does start, it seems to be going wider, and that's because of the range that is set here in the direction, because the direction is the direction in which the particles are going to move. So I'm going to set this to just 90 and 90, so they're all just moving completely upwards. But I'm going to also add a wiggle to it, just so it feels more alive there. So if I add like a wiggle of 20, that is looking much better now as opposed to say 0. That is too static. I'm going to make a waterfall out of this. I love to see that. So when you do, just send that to me on Twitter. Um, First of all, yeah, color. So the starting color should be, let's say, I'll make it a bit bluish because I saw that on like a torch reference. I'll set the middle color to yellow and the end color to a really dark red because I'm going to use the additive option. Now this option that I didn't show you before is the draw order of the particle system. And so the default order is that you're going to see new particles in front of old particles. But if you do reverse here, you're going to see the oldest particles in the front and the newer ones are sort of created in the back. So here you can see the older ones that really get brown by the end, they are at the top. But that's a reversed one. So by default, they will be at the back and the newer ones will be at the front. And that is what we want to use here. But you have that option. That is a system-wide option, as in the particle system asset-wide option. So you can't set that for each emitter. But yeah, let me check the additive option, and here we have a fire that looks like a fire now. I do want the size to go down. So let me set the increment for the size to minus 0.01. I think 0.02 is nice. I'm gonna set the end color to a complete black so we don't see a lot of those final particles. Maybe a bit more orange here, but anyway, this is not an art tutorial, so I shouldn't focus too much on the details. So we have the fire. Let me see if there's anything else that we can adjust. So the direction we have set, the gravity, as I mentioned before, you can use this if you want to add some wind. But the rest should be good. You can use the scale to make it a bit smaller if you want. And of course you can change the texture. So right now it's sphere, but you can really change its style if you change it to say disk, and that just immediately looks more stylized, and in a way I like that more. There's square as well, there's line and star, and obviously you can use your own sprites as well. Like I have this sprite here, so I could use that if I wanted, but I'm going to stick to the sphere one. And let me go and place that in the room. So I'll make an asset layer. Now in the asset layer at the top, I'm gonna place the torch sprite itself, and in the asset layer below that, I'm gonna put the fire here. Is it possible to make particle effect in pixel art style somehow? You can, because you can use your own sprites for the particles. So you can just make a pixelated sprite and you can then animate it. Yeah. So yeah, if I just hit play here, I have this nice effect on the torch now. You can add a couple more emitters to this. For example, I want to add smoke, so I'm gonna add that really quickly. I'm gonna rename this one first of all to flame. Then I'm gonna rename this new emitter to smoke. Let's make this be a smoke emitter. Let me close the room, and okay, first of all, I'm gonna make this smaller, and I'm gonna select the smoke texture for this. Color should be a darkish gray, and for the last color I'm gonna set the alpha to 0 so we see the smoke fade away. It should be slower, so I'll set the speed to, let's say, between 2 and 3 should be good. Now you can see these textures are quite detailed, and you can see they look very similar. So yeah, you can have a shader applied to a particle system, yeah, if you draw it manually, yeah. Or if you just apply a shader to the layer that is housing your particle system, you can do that. So yeah, as I was saying, this texture is looking quite repetitive, so you can change the orientation, sorry, so that the orientation is a random value between 0 and 360, and so it looks uh, more random there. And I am going to lower the alpha now. Now I do want this smoke to be as large as it is at the top, but near the bottom it shouldn't be so large that it sort of is visible at the bottom around the fire. So I'm gonna set the size to 0.5 and 0.5. That's gonna make it small, and then I'm gonna add an increment so the size keeps going up every frame. Let's try a small value like 0.02, and that is already doing a lot, so I might do 0.01, and yeah, I think I like that. So now I think my smoke is ready. It should be alive for a bit more, so I'll set the life between 50 and 100, let's say. It should be a bit more random than that. And so now you might have noticed that the smoke is appearing above the flame, so I can just move the emitter down in the list, and now it is behind the flame. So the smoke is ready. If you open the room again where you place the particle system, you're gonna see it here. Let me actually remove this one, it's getting quite annoying. Okay, it's in the other layer. Okay, I'm going to add one more emitter to this now, and that's going to be embers, and that makes it look much nicer than it is right now. So for this, let me select the pixel texture. It is going to be slower, so let's set the speed between, let's see, 1 and 3 should be nice, yeah. The area needs to be smaller so it covers the fire. Okay. Now the embers, some of them can be faster, so let's set the maximum to 5 for now, and let's lower its life from 80 to, let's say, a range of 30 and 50. The problem with this direction is it's too upward, so we want its direction to be a bit wider, its range to be a bit wider. So let me set the range to 60 and 120, the range of the direction, and now it is going in a wider direction now. I do want to add a wiggle to it, so there's more fluctuation in the way it moves, because embers will do that. So let's see, a wiggle of 20, and that makes it look nice. Maybe the area should be a bit wider. So I set the area to be wider, and okay, I think I'm editing the smoke there. Yeah, embers, and make it a bit wider, and set the distribution to Gaussian so we get more in the center, I can't wait to use this. Yeah, and you don't have to wait. You can actually download the beta version from the description, and you can use this right now. I'm using the public beta, so you can go and use this today. Um, the colors remaining. So let me set the middle color to a yellowish orange, the final color to black, and then enable additive. And so now it is looking, the fire as a whole is looking much nicer than before. And so if you again open the room where you put this particle system and you play it, you get every emitter that you added in the system, because that's what a system is. It's a collection of various emitters. Now let me quickly show you how to use shared particles, because we are at an hour now and we should end before this gets too long. So let me create a new particle system. Let's say PS big fire. We're gonna have the big fire here. And if you want to reuse the particle emitters that we made in the previous particle system, first of all, I'm gonna go and save all of these emitters as presets. So I've saved the ember, now I've saved the flame, and now I've saved the smoke. And now I can reuse these in other systems. So here, for this one, I'm going to select the embers one. It asks me to make sure that I want to do this because it's gonna overwrite whatever you have in the emitter right now. That makes sense because you're loading a new preset into it, so it's gonna use the new settings. So I'm gonna tell it to not show it to me again and hit OK. So I've got the embers here. Can you use particle systems inside sequences? Yeah, you can. Yeah, I showed that a while ago in the stream. You can use it, yeah. But if you do animate it, it's going to animate the whole particle system. So any particles that were created, they are going to move with the animation. So right now you can't just move the emitter and move the point where the particles are created, but it's going to move the whole system. That's how it is right now. Yeah, so let me make a new emitter. For this one, select the flame, make another one. For this one, select the smoke. Let me fix up the order here. Something going wrong with the file watcher. And now I have the same effect here. What's interesting is because I called it the big fire, I can select an emitter, take it and increase its range. I can do the same with the smoke and the embers. And so if you look back in your original particle system, even though you are all using the same emitters, you can still change their size and their position. So you can change things about the emitter to make it work differently in your new system, but it is the same particle type and emitter preset behind it. So if you change anything about the particle type itself, like if I select the flame and I change its color to blue, it changes that everywhere. So you can reuse presets and you can change things about its emitter. You can change its position and size to make it work differently in your new system. But if you change anything about the particle type itself, basically anything that has this yellow chain icon on it, it's going to be updated throughout every particle system that you've used the preset in. You can then, if you decide you don't want to have something linked anymore, So if I want to unlink, say, the embers from here, I can come in and I can press this unlink button, and now it's not linked anymore. So if I change its shape, if I use the spark shape, for example, and I go back to the old one, you'll see it's not changed because I unlinked it. It also doesn't have the yellow chain here anymore. So that's our particle effect there. And I also showed you how to make it at runtime. You basically want to use part system create and tell it which particle asset you want to create. It's gonna give you the part system ID. So this ID that you get of the particle system is the same as a regular particle system that you would have created if you would have just made an empty one. It's the same as that, so you can run the same part system functions on it. Now something interesting is that you uh, you can't rotate a particle system through code. You can't change its color. You can only change its position or some other things, but you can't rotate it. But if you've placed a particle system in a room, then through that sort of instance of it in the room, you can rotate it and you can change its color. So this is something that specifically rooms and sequences allow you to do. Yeah, Hunter, yeah, that is great because that allows you to have more flexibility in your systems. So you're using presets, but you can have them work differently. So you can rotate a system in the room, you can give it a color, and that's the same in a sequence as well. You can also rotate it and change its color, but that's something you can't actually do with a function. So with the function you can change its position where it's created, and so that should be reflected in the particle system. You can also use part system create layer, and just after the two default arguments, like after telling it the layer that you want to make it in and whether you want to make it persistent or not, you can then tell it which asset you want to make. Can you change the particle color of a particle system you made in the editor via code, like with normal particle systems now? If you're talking about taking a particle type that I made, like say fire, and changing its color, specifically its color at runtime, you can't do that because at the moment you can't get the particle types used in a system at runtime, but that would be nice to have. So I also hope that that is added going forward. But my demonstration of the particle system is now going to end here because we are over an hour now. And before I end though, I'm going to look at the chat for a minute again, and if you have any questions, let me know, and I might try to answer the ones that I can answer. So if you have any questions, I hope you are writing them right now because we need to end the stream and then we all need to go to sleep. You're welcome, Hunter. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream, and I do hope that after the stream you guys go and download the beta version from the link in the description and check out the particle editor, play around with it, and if you find anything that you think we can improve, if you find any bugs or anything, just go to contact.gamemaker.io and just submit a bug report because we get them all looked at, so we miss nothing. Matharoo putting all of us to bed. Yeah, it is almost 11 p.m. here, and it is 11 p.m. everywhere because time zones don't exist. Can you define a particle type and then use that with GML builds emitter sys or whatever? So do you mean can I define a particle type in the editor and then use that in GML with my own emitters or just with particles create? Because if that's what you're asking at the moment, you can't, because you can only create particle system assets. And so that particle system asset that you create is put as a whole into the game, whether you put it in a room or you create it with a function. You can't pick it apart and take its particle type and then use it uh, uh, in like particles create or use it in your own emitter. So that is not something you can do at the moment, but I also hope that that is added. So yeah, I mean, there's no need to be sad. I'm sure that will be added. It seems like an essential thing. But yeah, if you all just submit feature requests, I mean, then they can know that people are asking for that. Hello from Brazil. Hello from India. Particle systems are great, but I mean, if you meant for me to fill in the blanks, then I don't know what to fill that with because particle systems are great. We won't give back the rights here until we get the ability to get the particle type. Okay, I agree with that deal. But yeah, to everyone who has watched and who's still watching, very sorry to your right ear. I hope your right ear isn't listening, so this sorry won't go to it. But I hope that after the stream, you can go and apologize to your right ear from me on my behalf because I am sorry to your right ear. But yeah, it seems there aren't any more questions in the chat, and my demonstration is done. So I'm going to end the stream here. I hope you guys and your left ears enjoyed this stream. I hope you check out the particle editor, and I am hopefully going to see you again in a new stream. Bye bye, happy game making. And now, awkward 2 seconds before I hit end.